Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live session of GETI Talks. My name is Shilpi, and I'm the Relationship Manager for the Global Education and Training Institute. Well, I have two very special people with me. My mentor and my guide, Professor Sunita Gandhi, the founder and director of Global Education and Training Institute. And along with her is Megs Journey, who is the founder and director of IBME, leading the empowerment and education revolution. I'll just introduce her before we get into a conversation as to exploring more into education. Meg Hanshaw is a PhD. She is the founder and executive director. She has been called an educational and wellness visionary for the 21st century, supporting all ages in understanding and living a healthy, empowered, purposeful life. Her mission is to have a profound impact on the health and education of the world by teaching and living the principles of the world's happiest and healthiest people. And that is, he researches and lectures about how the heart-brain connection affects the development and prevention of chronic illness, as well as how it affects our work and home system. So without wasting any further time, I would like Gandhi and Meg Hanshaw to get into a conversation as to how to explore the present education system in the countries. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Shilpi. It is so awesome to have Meg here with me. We are discussing education and what education can be in the future as a departure from what we have known it to be. And we've had a few conversations along the way before we got here together for the evening. And what we discovered, we are truly kindred spirit. We're both forming a movement to shift the education system into a better place for young people and teachers. Both India and the US, unfortunately, are still using old systems of education that do not work anymore. Meg has been researching, benchmarking, and piloting programs in schools for over 25 years to create a new system of education to replace the old one. She's convinced that the education system all over the world will completely shift into a healthy and empowering system of learning in the next 10 years, and it better, because we know that the education as we know it is not a comfortable place for many, many people, and it's not working for all children. So, Meg, do you have anything to say about, two continents here, Asia, and you in the US, North America, thinking parallelly about education and its reform?
Yes. And there is an echo. So that would be amazing. We're having a technical difficulty. There we go. We're finding different ways to work on different sides of the world. So thank you for that. I'm really excited to be here and honored to get to know you and your movement. And I believe that it is happening, that people like you and I and lots of leaders around the world, and especially people that are older, like not the young people yet, but we've been through the systems. We've actually done the research, and we can see it. We can see it very clearly that it's not working. And these children and young people and students are really suffering. And sometimes the students don't really know it. So I believe just the two continents coming together and more is going to be a part of this shift in the next decade. So it's really exciting.
No doubt, Meg, absolutely. Where do you think your passion and commitment comes from? What's your calling? What makes you work on the new?
Yes, and I don't forget to mute. Can you mute? Thank you. If she doesn't mute, I cannot hear myself. So So yes, I'm a very passionate person. I started out in athletics and I was an athlete, and I have always had this passion and this drive to just make myself better. And not that I didn't like myself the way I was, but it was just something inherent in me. And I loved the game of basketball, and I loved people. And I became so passionate in that sport, and I would just practice and I would go for it and sweat and build my skills. And then all of a sudden I lost that passion, and it wasn't fun anymore. And it was a job, and I was stressed, and I was scared to make mistakes. And I I got injured, and I ended up leaving the basketball team in my junior year. My junior year in college, and that was hard because I was not happy, and I was sick, and I was injured, and a little bit depressed, and really wondering why I couldn't play the way I wanted to. And I think what that did was it sparked something in me, a researcher side of me that I didn't know I had. And I left college as a PE teacher, a physical education teacher, and a health teacher, and knew I wanted to coach basketball and work with kids around their health and their mental health, their physical health. And I just began to study everything I could study in psychology, in sports psychology, and motivation. And I was determined to discover what it took for kids to not quit their passions, to move through challenges, to be healthy and thriving. And that became sort of my signature. What does it take for young people to thrive? And I was like a train going down a track without brakes. And I was stacks of research, and I ended up getting a master's in exercise science, which was more around health and how to take care of yourself and how to work with your mental skills in sports. And then I went on to get a PhD in education because I started to see, as I was piloting these programs that I was researching and making up, I started to see a change in my athletes. And it started to work, and I started to change around teams. I'd go find a team that wasn't doing very well. I'd go find a high school team, a secondary team, or a college team as an assistant and I was always in a turnaround mode. How do we turn that team around? How do we make them better? And I ended up being a turnaround person. And I think that as I became a professor and went into the university, I saw these university students not caring. They didn't care. They didn't just give me the syllabus and let me just do what I need to do to get the grade and get out of here. They weren't connected to their passions. They weren't connected to who they were. And I said, what? And I knew it on some level, but I did not know it on the level that I was seeing. So I said, I'm going to take this philosophy and this process that I've been creating in athletics, and I'm going to start to research in my PhD how to begin to do that in this education system. And that passion has never left me. It has just driven me. And today, I started about 10 years ago, I started a nonprofit called International Body Mind Empowerment Enterprises, IBME. And I had no idea where this was going to go. But what I knew was that I had to have a role in shifting the system, that the system itself was not working. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But this nonprofit was to hold the research. It was to hold what I was doing. It was to hold the programs, because the students and the teachers and the principals and the districts don't have the money to be able to put out there to make the changes, to get the trainings, to learn all these new things that we now know that aren't in the education system. And so I said, the nonprofit is the way to go. And I was a teacher, so I had to learn business. I had to go back and retrain myself. And so 10 years later, we're finished with doing the piloting in the schools. And now we're getting ready to put it all online and launch it. And we're meeting people like you and other people around the world to come together as a group in our own areas to make or to emit this energy that we love these children, we love these students, and they deserve something way better. So that, and I'm very passionate, and I could talk on it forever.
Very true. Children deserve so much better. And I am just awed hearing about your story. Doesn't that kind of story, that frustration, feeling it personally in your life, drive you towards wanting to make a change? And we're so glad that you're doing it, because we need more people across the globe who are thinking in the same way, to create a critical mass of thinking out there, which will then possibly bring about change in a quicker way. So change will happen. Change is inevitable, whether it's today or tomorrow. The old building of education is crumbling down. The square foundation needs to be a round foundation. We can't keep fixing up the old building. We need to build a new foundation, clearly. So I can see that that reform movement has to come from people who are passionate about change. It can't happen just by wishing it or just wanting it, but to actually go out and really create that space in which you are calling upon other similar minded people to join hands for this particular cause. And I think in education, by and large, we don't see too many people working together. We're so busy with the mill of everyday work, especially when we look at teachers and school heads. Their work is cut out. It's all like a formula that you go and implement, and you just don't know how years go by. I mean, 20 years later, as my good friend Dwight Allen used to say, Professor Dwight Allen, he was at Stanford when he and his group came up with the idea of micro teaching. And I invited him to India in 1998, and found one of his statements was that after 20 years of teaching, and I found it interesting because I thought that was perhaps an Asian thing, but he said it's the same thing in the US. After 20 years of teaching, teachers do not have 20 years of real experience. At best, they have 20 years of 1 year experience. So they repeat what they know. And I was just wondering, therefore, what are the challenges at this point in time? And that was 1998, 1999, when I was in touch with Dwight Allen. So many years later, what do you think is facing the challenges that are facing education in the US and, in your view, worldwide? Because you're connected to, I believe, with Martin, to many other people across the globe. And creating this global community. So you probably have a lot of views about, what needs to change. What are the challenges?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. I just think it's amazing who you're connected with and what you're doing. So I think, bringing in what's happening in the United States is very similar to many other places in the world. And I would say, I'm a visionary and I see systems. And so when I look at the education system, among other systems, I look at a framework of where it's sitting. So the framework that the education system in general is sitting in is that the system is ruling. The system, somebody has decided that there's something that everybody needs to learn that's the same. And those people aren't you and I. They're not people that have been in the trenches. They're not people that are going and talking and coaching and being with young people, hundreds of them. And I've been around young people coaching and teaching since I was 26 years old, over 30 years. So, I know what they're thinking and feeling, and I've had that experience. I didn't have a wonderful educational experience, but and in my opinion, and from the research I've been doing, it's the system, the rules, that if you do not follow the rules, the system, and you don't fit into the box, something is wrong with you. That's the message that's being sent. And this box has been created by people who don't really know what it takes for students to thrive within themselves with health and wellness, what it takes them to thrive with resilience and moving through challenges. They really are not looking at the whole person. They're not looking at how that person takes their passions and their gifts and who they are and putting them into the world and being so proud of those that if everybody's doing that, their motivation is skyrocketing and they're like, okay, what do I want next? Tell me. Oh, are you a master at this? Let me learn. They're going to seek out mastery in their purpose. And if everybody's doing that, we're happy, we're relaxed, we're healthy. And so when the system is ruling that and they're telling people, young people, what to learn, which is the system greater than the skills, then the skills are greater than the person. So I always look at system greater than the skills, greater than the person. That's the education system right now. And I think that is our challenge, because the person is there, but the person has a veil over them. The student has a veil. The teachers have a veil. They're not being asked to do their passion either. We're putting teachers into the box. You do it this way, and then we're all good. Well, the challenge is we're not all good. We're all good for what? To be graded and evaluated on what those people believe are the right things to learn. And it shuts off creativity. It shuts off innovation. It shuts off excitement, intrinsic motivation. And what it's actually doing is it is causing such an energy block in our young people that they're getting sick. And we call this the threatening three, and research is backing this up. And I'm not saying it's just the education system that's causing challenges in our young people, but it is huge. What my research is showing that the education system is actually unintentionally causing some primary and secondary trauma in not only our young people but in our teachers and administrators. So those threatening threes that we're seeing all over the world, I don't know about India, but in the United States, we are seeing an increase in suicide. Suicide is I'm going to pull the stat up. It's the second leading cause of death for 15 to 19-year-olds and the second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds in the United States. So that's one of our threatening threes. And our other one is cancer or chronic disease. Cancer right now is the second leading cause of death for 5 to 9-year-olds and the third leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds in the United States. And that's the second threatening three. And then we have violence and bullying and crime and incarceration. And homicide is our third leading cause of death for 15 to 19-year-olds and the third leading cause of death for 1 to 4-year-olds. And so we, in general, are struggling as a nation. And I have connected with other people in other parts of the world, and they are struggling with similar statistics. And so this is research is showing, and if you would like me to, I could share the ACE study, because research is showing, and I think many people have maybe heard of the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, and there's many people who have not heard about it. And this is, as I did my research early on, I was really looking into education and psychology and leadership and motor learning and things to build skills. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I got introduced to neuroscience and epigenetics. And neuroscience changed my world because I could see that the way children were being treated, and in myself too, over the years, that something was happening within within my body and within my mind that was not allowing me to thrive. I couldn't play basketball the way I wanted to. Something was blocking me. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even really know that there was something going on. I just felt like, oh well, I'm not playing very well and I feel really bad about myself. Oh well. I didn't really know that something was going on with me. And so I think that's what's happening to our young people right now. They don't really know that something is going on with them. And the ACE study was a study that was done in the 90s. And it was, just to make a long study short, basically, there was a group of scientists, and we have something called the Centers for Disease Control here in the United States, and it came out of that. So it's a very reliable and valid research project that's been going on now for many, many, many years. It continues. But basically, they took mostly white males, around 17,000 of them, middle class, and gave them a full health evaluation, very, very intense. And then they asked them about some of their background. What have they experienced? Have they experienced abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse? Have they experienced neglect or any dysfunction in their household? And they didn't think they were going to find anything, and then they did. They were like, whoa. And Dr. Folletti and Dr. Ananda are the ones who spearheaded this study, and I've seen them speak before, and they were flabbergasted. They had no idea that there was going to be a connection between childhood experiences, adverse childhood experiences, and health, addiction, mental health, suicide, chronic disease, especially chronic disease, and early death. And so when I started to see that and hear that information, the light bulb went off and said, we don't have much time to waste. We've got to set up an environment in schools where students and teachers are thriving. And so that research study now, and you can go to the cdc.gov, and you can look up that study. Just look up, search ACE study, and there's all the information is there. And so the school system is unintentionally creating an environment where students don't have any control. They don't have any choice. And in America, in the United States, it's getting worse. It's getting worse and worse. It's almost like I want to say like a mini prison in a way. And I hate to say that. And this is not about teachers, and this is not about principals. This is about the system itself. Kids are lined up. They can't move. They can't figure out conflict resolution. If they make a mistake, they're sent to the principal's office. They can't learn from their mistakes. When we're in the schools, we worked with a group of students from kindergarten to fourth grade and all their teachers, and we got to train their teachers and work with them in the new paradigm. And I'll give you a real quick example of what's not working, and then I'll be quiet. So here's an example. There's a group of children, and they're standing in line, and they're getting ready to go out to play for recess, the 30 minutes that they get in the day. That's it in the United States, 30 minutes. So they are lined up, and two children, and I'm in there, are starting to push and shove. And in the old paradigm, the teacher would say, hey, you, no, hey, you, no, stop that. Stand still, line up. Well, what's happening is those children aren't learning why they're fighting, what's really going on. They're not learning any emotional intelligence. They're not learning any social intelligence. They're just being put. And if they do it again, they get a check mark or whatever. They get written up. And then there's, if they push, they're done. You push somebody, you're done. Well, there's nothing. They go to the principal's office, and the old paradigm is the principal says, what'd you do? Shame. What'd you do? I mean, the children are frozen, and this could be any age. This could be all the way up to high school, secondary. So that's what's not working. We're not listening, we're not connecting, and we're not giving choices. We're wanting them to achieve externally, to be somebody. Who they are as a person is not in the equation. And we know without a doubt that if we don't put the P first, we're going to go back to early death, addictions, depression, dropping out of school, not feeling good about ourselves. So that is my little thing about the system right now. I could go on, but thank you.
Wow, I think that the people who are watching the live talk tonight will all probably agree with you that these are the challenges of our current education system, and that very little has changed over the years. Okay, we have, maybe more technology in the classroom, better, faster ways of learning content, but we are not dealing with the real issues, the germane issues of education, what it is to be a human being, and how to nurture that human being and bring out the best in that person. So obviously, your research is very, very pertinent here, and I believe you have done a lot of research. So we'll look into that in a minute. But I was just thinking and juxtaposing myself when you were speaking, that I was in California. I was working at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratories for about a year before I joined the World Bank, and and I was a physicist. I got my education in physics in the UK. So I was in sports. We're talking about sports. I was in baseball group called Ballpark Estimates. And well, the reason we called ballpark estimates because we were just the worst Berkeley University batch. We were just not good enough, and I think it's in a way it was funny because we made ourselves feel lighter about it. We had fun with that concept. But why do we divide children in groups? Why do we compare them with each other? How does it help? Because obviously, I think that could be the root cause of pretty much a lot of that's negative about education. It's like who are you is defined by the marks you get, and you're not going to be motivated by the old system to go get the marks. So 80% of the class, maybe even 100% of the class at various points in time doesn't feel good about their own potential. They don't think they're good enough. And I think the opposite should be the case, that every child should feel I'm so capable, I can do this, I can learn the next this and the next that. So it is really designed more like to punish you for things you don't know, as you've just said, rather than build intrinsic motivation in you to go and be yourself and learn what you can with your own interest and develop that interest. So I'm a fan of Dr. Maria Montessori and her work with the young children, way back 100 years ago, 113 years ago, 2020. Right now we're talking about 1907. So when she created her Casa di Bambini and became overnight sensation. So her work showed to me that children are capable of deducting by themselves and learning by themselves through the control of error. And we should trust that they will learn by their own mistakes. And we don't. And so we tend to be more like policing the children. Sort of children might feel like jailers in a jail, and being disciplined, being almost sort of, we're looking out for what they've done wrong rather than what they've done right. And all this is the ill effects of perhaps an education in which comparison is so inbuilt, while what we want is cooperation, what we want is collaboration, of course, but then we want also people to compete, if you like, if the word compete has to be used, then compete with yourself and not another. And so how do we recreate an education around these new principles? That I'd just love to know from your research, if you think this has merit. I've been doing some research on this in UK, Iceland, and India, and basically it got published in 2017, and it shows that children do far better when they are not compared with each other academically, but also their self-confidence and sense of well-being. these are harder to capture, so we can only capture the academic improvement, and yes, they are improving more. So just love to know your view. I mean, all these things, Littleton in 1999 US, I was living in the US at the time, and I thought, my God, such minor little differences, and they're killing each other. What kind of an inhumane world are we creating? Because they're comparing with, each other. And that was the crux or the reason behind it. Anyway, so we can go on, but I'd like to hear from you, and I'm going to mute myself in just this second and ask you what research has, pointed. I believe your research has pointed to a major solution, and the kind of shifts that's required. Can you share that in your research work, and what is the way forward in your view, and what's the solution?
Yes, wonderful question. Thank you. So, we are in a shift, and I love what you just said. I totally agree with everything. And I'm so, like you said, to have a kindred spirit who can see it and know it and feel it, it's just time for us to speak up and stand for that in a very positive, collaborative way, meeting the system where it is now. And I would say that is what my research is showing. So we're in a shift. And we've got a foot in that old paradigm of competition and no choice, and not learning emotional and social intelligence, and not tapping into the passions. And then we've got a foot now that's starting to happen little by little all over the world, based on principles of success that we know help children thrive. It's not like a mystery anymore. With neuroscience and all the research in the last 20 years, we know. And so now it's, how do we do it? Like the research is there. How do we actually apply it? So first of all, we got to flip the system. We got to put the P greater than the S, greater than the rules. We got to put the person greater than the skills, greater than the rules or the system. Now this framework comes from something called value science. It's a theory, and it's actually quantitative, saying that if we go inward and we find the intrinsic within the person, they're going to thrive. And not only us, but them, right? We're supporting the young people to find the intrinsic. What's important to me? My values. What do I thrive on? What are my passions? And so value science shows that the more you're connected to that, the more you feel like you're flourishing or thriving, and it's connected now to health. We know that through the studies with the ACE study and beyond. So that's the first thing. We got to swap it. So that's the middle of what we call the empowerment education model. And I'm calling it a framework because it's a framework for everyone. It doesn't really tell you exactly what you need to do, but it gives you principles and a framework for you to check the box and say, am I, I don't want to say box, check the circle, check the triangle. But you get to sort of see if you are meeting the new paradigm standards, right? And you and I had this conversation that, that makes it more fun, because it's not like, oh, you have to teach this way. So the first thing is we're shifting that, put the person first. And within that, we're looking at whole person. That child, do they understand their own self-care? Do they understand their wellness and their well-being? And wellness is a major pillar of the new paradigm. We cannot have a system that does not support students in understanding what makes them healthy. And do they eat enough? Do they eat, are they sleeping enough? Are they breathing enough? Are they relaxing enough? Are they meditating enough? And when I say enough, it's individualized. That's all individualized. And that's the tricky piece. So we'll get to that when we get to the examples, but it is individualized for the most part. So we've got the wellness piece, and then we've got the empowerment piece. And this is the E, and the pillars of the empowerment education framework start with the internal, move into partnership, move into community, move into world, and then move into the unified field, the quantum, right? And so this is stuff that's backed up by science. We need to understand the energetic connection of everything, and that we can't just isolate a child over here and say, you know, this is the way you do it, when that child is connected to way more than we would ever know. Who are we to tell that child who he or she is? We're not. So that's the model, that's the framework, and within it there are 4 main pillars. Wellness is the first one we just talked about. The second one is empowerment, and empowerment is about, are you able to understand that a challenge is an opportunity, and can you begin to work on your nervous system ability, resilience to handle that challenge? So go back to the 2 children in line. So how we would handle that and teach teachers to do it and train them and coach them is to ask them, hey, and I know teachers are in a hurry, so this is another catch-22 that we have to deal with. But with time, with having about 2 minutes, you would say, hey, I can see that something's going on here. I am so curious. I want to know about it. I want to know what's going on. I want to hear you. I want to see you. I want to value you. And what we end up training teachers to do that on the fly. So those children feel so taken care of, and they can figure out what to do. And what we see later on is these children are doing it themselves. And I'll give you an example. This group we followed from kindergarten to 4th grade. This group of kids, you talk about emotional intelligence and passion and social intelligence. It was night and day to watch them go from kindergarten to 4th grade and watch their group handle things totally different than the other classes in the school. And so these 2 young 4th graders are standing in line, and one pushes, same kids that were in kindergarten. And the one girl turns around and says, you know what? I don't like that. I don't want you to push me. And if you do it again, we're going to have to figure out what to do, because I don't want to be pushed. What's going on with you? What's going on with you? I mean, it was like, and I just was like, yay, because she knew she didn't like it, but she didn't push him back. She didn't yell at him. She actually had empathy. Like, what is going on with you? And he said, I don't know. And I happened to be there, and he looked at me, and I said, well, what's going on? And he walked over and said, so-and-so, said something negative to me today, one of his friends. And I said, I bet you that hurt. And he said, yeah. He was fine. He went on. So it's not that is just a small microcosm of just how to connect in the moment. We call that the wave process. We actually have a system of coaching teachers on how to do that, and what happens when you do that. And I don't know if you all are familiar with the hand model of the brain. This is Dan Siegel from the United States. And, the hand model is, this is the executive functioning here. This is your fight, flight, or freeze, lower brain reaction. This is your amygdala in here. And so kids, when they have their lids flipped, their higher learning brain is not on their emotional processing center, and they're regulated, and it's flipped, they cannot learn in that moment. So if they've pushed and their lid is flipped, we need to connect with them, see, hear, and value them to bring it back down. Now their brain is back online, and the wave process does that. And it's basically listening from the heart and learning to ask powerful questions. And what we call that is the coaching framework, the science of coaching. And it's very powerful. So that's empowerment. Empowerment is the missing link. It's the thing that's missing in the school system. We have some wellness going on, little bit, right? We have some, the third pillar is leadership, heart-centered leadership. We have some of that going on, how to step up and speak out and stand for a cause and help others stand for a cause, or, speak out what you believe in. We do some of that to a degree. And then the last pillar is legacy, which is living your purpose right now. So you're living your legacy now. So if you're 3 years old, we're not saying, oh, when you get to college, you'll figure out what you do, right? Legacy is now. What's your passion? So we've got wellness, empowerment, leadership, and legacy. And the E, the empowerment piece, the neuroscience, the neurobiology is the piece with the ACE study and everything coming together all over the world in this area. It's the missing link. And so when we go into a classroom and we're looking at how to shift that, right? We meet them right where they're at. We validate. We do not say, hey, this is wrong or you're doing it wrong. We need to build that trust. We need to get them into a system of trust and connection so the teachers are open. And when they feel open and ready and they know they don't have to know it, then we're able to start to bring that well. And that's a framework for everyone. There's so many different ways to do that. So that is our basic framework of what we're doing and what we need to see across the board.
This is very beautiful, Meg. I think you have touched upon so many aspects of what needs to change in education. And what's interesting is that this is all coming from research, from neuroscience and from other recent research. So it's something that is supported by data, by evidence, and I think that obviously means it's working. So we should be able to adopt it carte blanche. So your 4 pillars of wellness, empowerment, then
Yes.
you had leadership, I think, and legacy. And I really love the legacy part as well. Children are creating their own legacy. How we look back at our albums when we were little and, we kind of muse over things, or mothers and parents do, grandparents do, and they look at themselves, at a younger version of themselves. And it is a legacy. And God created us all so beautiful as human beings with a great mission. We can all create our own legacies. And I really love that thought process of yours. Empowerment, you explained so beautifully. Leadership, we couldn't get into much. But then the question is now, here we have a lot of leaders who are listening to your conversation. These are school heads in India, and possibly beyond. I have a good number of people from Singapore whom I know and who occasionally do come into our live talks. So the issue is, how do you convert these ideas that are research-based, that are obviously correct, into classroom practice? So that's my next question or discussion with you.
Yes, thank you. That is the secret question, right? That is like, how do we do that? So that's what I've been doing, and I would say not doing, but I've been learning how to do for the past 10 years. And, it's not easy, especially when the system is still in the old paradigm, still system greater than skills, greater than person. So what I have been doing with a couple people on my staff is we would go into schools, get permission from the principal, tell them what we're doing. And then in the beginning, it wasn't so easy because we hadn't had the experience of it. So we weren't saying the right things about what was going to happen. But once we did it for a while, we were able to go in a little more clearly and say, hey, I need permission from you if I'm going to work with this teacher, because you're going to see some big changes. And at first we would work with children that were the most highly challenged behaviorally or academically. And we would work with them in hallways, in sometimes like resource closets that, we'd set up in resource closets. We would do whatever we could to try out our system, to see if we could get the P greater than the S greater than the R within the system. And what we found is we can do it. And it happens fast. Like once you put these principles into play, it happens fast. The challenge that we have is that we need to support teachers in knowing what it feels like to be empowered or well empowered leaders who are living their legacy now. And we always say well-empowered, heart-centered leaders who love to learn, love life, and are living their legacy now. And this is for the teachers too. They've got to experience that on some level to really know what it feels like to create an environment like that. So I would say the first step is we've got to allow teachers to know that they were trained in an old way and it's not their fault. And I know for me as a teacher, I would go in there and I was put the mark on the board. They taught me. And when they say another word again, put a second mark on the board, Meg. And if they say a third thing, put the third mark. And I would be like, I got to do that. And I would do it. And it was like everything in my body said no. And I was young. I was in my 30s. And so, we are going away from that, right? And so these teachers need to understand that those principles and those theories, maybe not the theories, but we're applying the theories incorrectly. Some of these theories are still fine, but the way we apply them is not. So instead of putting their names on the board, we're listening and getting curious, right? And so we've got to retrain teachers. We've got to coach teachers. Teachers, if they can experience coaching. And so we're setting up with Martin Richards out of Sweden, a partnership in something called Coaching for Educators. And this would be a gift. We are working on a platform to have a gift of life and wellness coaching for teachers so they can have that experience. It's like a key. It's a key foundation, I guess I should say. And then we want them to be in a group, these teachers, so they can experience what it means to listen from the heart. They have the experience of. And I think that's critical. And we do something else called a World Cafe, which will be, but basically it would be open. It's a gift for teachers to start to have that feeling, or we set it up in their school and they have that experience of what it feels like to be listened from the heart. And we also have administrators and leaders learn to do that. I've been coaching a principal now for 3 years out of one of the high schools here in Asheville, North Carolina. And just to see how the administrator becomes empowered herself and how that empowers her own staff and her students is incredible. It's like until they feel it and see it and know what's blocking them to grow in this way. So that's number one. Let's get people trained. Let's get people into all these things that are going on all over the world to support them in having that. And number two is understand the research. I think leaders need to understand that the old paradigm of the system being greater than the skills being greater than the person is not creating the student or the human being that's going to be productive for your society. It's actually doing the opposite. It's making them sick, addicted, and not feeling good about themselves, scared. Walking around with their lids flipped all the time, seeing how they're going to mess up. You can't thrive in that environment. So I think leaders need to really say, wait a minute, okay, it's not working. They're not. They might have the A, but what is that doing? We have valedictorians that leave high school and end up going to a college on full rides, and they drop out because they don't know who they are. They don't know what they're to do. And they prove to everybody they're smart through straight A's, but they're lost. They don't feel good. So I think this is not just here in the United States. This is everywhere. So let's get those leaders to really know the information and understand it. And I think once they understand it, really see the new paradigm, now they say, okay, let's start to implement it. And you implement it in little bits and pieces. So you say to yourself, okay, how are we going to put the person first? How are we going to absolutely listen to these children? How are we going to set up an environment where they get to practice some wellness? They get to move through their challenges. They get to step up and talk about who they are and what they love. And right, even at 3 years old, how do we set that up? And I think it can be done many different ways. And so one of the ways we do it, and this would be in an elementary school, a primary school, is we train the teachers, we coach the teachers, we help them understand, we help them get out of fear that the principal is gonna fire them, or they're gonna get in trouble. And once they feel safe, which sometimes takes a while for the teacher to feel safe to start making these changes, then we pick what feels good to them first. So we go with the teacher's passion. We meet the teacher where the teacher is, and we say, what is our first thing? And I might pick out some things that I'm seeing, but there's still an agreement. I'm showing up as as a coach for education, as a coach for the teacher, to get an agreement, not, or even she or he is in charge, and I'm giving them the new perspective. So I think it's very crucial that we have somebody in the school, and I see, I call them IB.me coaches, but they can be called anything, that are trained in this, and they go into a school and support administration and teachers in making the shift. And the other thing I think works very well that we have found is something, we call it a well lab. And a well lab is a place in the school that takes the place of suspension, detention, and it's a well lab. And I'm sure lots of people are trying these out. I've seen a lot of research on this. And basically, I see it as a spiral. So that is the hub, and kids go there to get well. If they're having a trigger, or the teacher's having a trigger and they want to yell at each other, or something's happening, the well lab is a place to go, be heard, listen to build trust, and then to get the support that the teacher and the student needs. And then those go back into the classroom, and that coach can also help the teacher make changes towards the new paradigm. So we believe that is a really good way. That's what we have found that has been very successful in helping teachers trust the students more, have more patience, help the students create new empowering beliefs about themselves, take small steps so they don't have to learn by 3rd grade how to read. If they learn by 6th grade, oh well, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that's when their brain was ready to learn to read, right? And so we also really highly encourage teachers to use what we call PCAs, positive contribution appreciations. We use that more than praise. And praise is, we limit it, because if a student comes up and says, hey, Miss Meg, look at this. Oh, I can see you're so excited. Tell me about what's making you so excited. So it shifts back to the person. Everything is going back to the P. And we're saying, oh, so you love the colors. You know what? I so much appreciate that you love art. It brings joy to my heart when you are so happy doing the thing you love. What else would you like to do with this art project? Oh, well, I want to go share it, and I want to teach my friends how to do it. Oh, let's do that. So, there are times within the day that can happen, and it takes the place of the art class. It takes the place of, reading. So instead of putting everybody in one group and doing the same rote things with everybody in the group exactly the same way, how can we do it that the children are learning to read through their passions, So how do we get them in their passions? Well, we have a classroom where every kid they come in, they know their passion in the classroom. And this is a public school with 25 kindergarten students with a teacher that's been trained for 4 years. And those kids know exactly what they're passionate about. And they go right to it. And they're like busy bees. They're like, okay, we're going to do this today. Can I do this? And they're just like, boo, boo, boo. And they get into a argument. They're working it out. So when it moves into secondary school, all the way up, it looks very similar. Those students are, they already know what they love. They're in major projects, coming together, collaboration, because if they've been doing it all along, right, they're already in that new paradigm. They're intrinsically motivated to the highest level. And what I find with our interns in high school and college, that the amount of productivity, it's off the charts. And they're doing things that I don't even know about. They're way beyond us if we let them have that creativity. So those are my examples.
I think, again, a very insightful set of thought processes. I think we're not as familiar with the coaching. Of course, it's more like hand-holding model where the coach knows the kinds of transformations that are needed at the school level and has been trained by something like IBME, deeply thinking about the science of life and wellness coaching aspects and making them into wellness coaches. And then the whole idea of the wellness, well-being and being able to orchestrate a lot of those relationships, create new paradigms within the school community. I mean, everybody's plagued in the school. If you look at teachers, they're just feeling overburdened, though they get a lot of holidays. But that's nearly not enough, because during the working days, they're just absolutely feeling stymied by the workload. There are issues of children, of course, as we've discussed, in the US, of course, in India as well, suicides, mental issues, disorders, so many things are going on, which are just, it's like a disaster waiting to happen, or is happening in front of us. And we seem so helpless because we are so sold on the system. And even the skills part of it, and we forget the person. So this whole upside down kind of education that you're promoting, with the wellness coach going in and kind of helping facilitate and bring about those changes that connect hearts, that make everybody feel good and realize their own potential and go and achieve things in a fearless way, because actually with all these old tactics, you're building a lot of fear, as you've also said in your own words. I think these are just absolutely desirable directions. The only worry I have is, on the one hand, you said 10 years, we want to see like major shift in thinking. That is coming by perhaps the frustration that a lot of people are feeling about education. But when we look at the coaching model, it can take a long time, because it's one-to-one, it's person to person, it's like slow but sure transformation. How do you see this as shifting our education system? B, how can we accelerate these things across the world? I know you've got a group, but we're talking about multiplying it a millionfold. So how do you scale up this whole idea?
I just got choked on that question. Woo! Woo, that was a good question, I guess. Woo, it went down the wrong way. Excuse me. Woo. I think that in 10 years, it's going to be over. We are going to have the shift. It's on the way there. I think as teachers become, we feel teachers will be trained as coaches. We don't think that it's going to be one coach that's going to take the burden. Yes, there's one coach that could be hired in the school system or in the school, but as I think teachers need to be retrained as coaches. And I think when they do that, coaching can be done in groups. So you can walk into a classroom of 25 people, and Martin Richards is really good at this, and turn it into turn it inside out. The person becomes first, even though there's 25 to 50 kids in the classroom. There's a way to be an empowerer of that classroom and bring that wellness, empowerment, leadership, and legacy out in every single person. That's what we're training. And I think it's going, once these teachers feel what it feels like, I think it's just going to happen. What I find with the teachers is as long as they feel like they have permission, once they have the framework, they're like, boom, 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 boom. Right. And I do think that's the ticket. I think we really get leaders to understand, get coached themselves. And this is different than instructional coaching. So I do think that it is a, like if we have, say, for instance, listening from the heart, let's say we have 200 people on that experiential course, and they're learning what it feels like to be listened to for the first time, many of them. Something happens in the nervous system and in the brain. Something shifts within that person that they can't go back and be the other way. It's almost impossible, because they understand now what it feels like to listen to a child and not to put them into a corner because they didn't do it right. So I think once, and again, this is not blaming the teacher. This is blaming how they were trained. Right? This is not the teachers just doing what they think they need to do. So I do think it's going to speed up. I do think as long as we're bringing those principles in, we're speaking up, we're partnering, like you said, we can't do it by ourselves. Let's all partner. Let's bring people in that are ready, and let's do something to get the movement going. And then especially the students, the older students. I think the older students, once they realize, if we can get them to be a part of the movement and understand what's happening to them, that they deserve an environment of learning that they thrive in, not stressed out and overwhelmed and wanting to go binge on Netflix for 8 days and play video games till the cows come home. Like it's. I think they're avoiding, and they're trying to get away from that stress, and that's all, or drinking or drugs or sex. So I think these students, what I have found, once they understand what's happening to them, they're like, oh my gosh, when I go to my class, I'm going to ask for what I want. I don't want to do this project. This project does not, can I do a different project? So the students are starting to speak up. And I think the students are the ones that say, I don't want to do it this way anymore. And the teachers say, I don't want to do it this way anymore. So I think, that's a lot of it, and that's going to help speed it up. But I think we've got the principles. Let's just come together. Let's discuss these principles. Let's work together as a group to see how this particular system is going to portray those principles. And as long as they know what it feels like, they're gonna be on their way.
Yep, absolutely. Could not agree more. And I think now we should be wrapping up, given it's already an hour into the program. We'll surely be missing, a lot more of what you have to say. But I'm glad that you reminded me of Martin Richards in Sweden. And he is one of our presenters, as well as Meg, at the upcoming Ed Leadership International Roundtable, which will be in January as a virtual conference from the 21st to the 23rd of January. This is the 13th Ed Leadership International Roundtable. And we are delighted that both Martin and Meg will be there, and some of the other coaches, master coaches, and that we can bring this coaching model into India, because actually we all need hand-holding. We all need somebody to remind us of what needs to be changed, because we get busy with what we know, and we all obviously know that so well that we tend to repeat ourselves in that system. And so the coaching concept is a very rich concept. We're not used it as much. We have training, which is sort of different. Like, I mean, even the GETI training to some extent, we give the training, then we rely upon the teachers and the principals or the school heads to continue to mentor that. They become the coaches, because how long can we handhold? But we hope that the training that they'll go will transform their heart, and they will believe in what whatever they're trained in. They'll believe that this is their cause, this is something that they want to go and do. And if they want to do it, it creates a need in them, then they'll go and do it. Then we don't need so much of hand holding. So that's a model, of course, with Getty Global Education and Training Institute, the host tonight. We have been trying very hard to have training stick, and empowerment. We say, so it's training that sticks, empowerment that lasts, hopefully, and change that can be measured. So change that is measurable. And how do you create that change, the delta? It's, of course, a lot of it is qualitative, it's feelings, it's a sense of well-being, it's sense of movement, a sense of aspiration. These are never measured in education properly anyway. So yes, but there's a difference, and I think that's measurement enough. So the coaching model is a way to visualize education differently, deliver a different outcome, and to basically create the circumstances for a new education system that we so urgently need. And I think it's really a warm welcome approach that you're taking, Meg, with your I Be Me. I think it's so easy to remember I Be Me, and from that, Meg Hanshaw. So I think that I'm delighted that we can partner, and Getty is already partnering with Martin and with you to carry out a training program very, very soon, as soon as we can get enough people who would be interested in the agenda. Because again, the pandemic is holding us back in many different ways. So the timing has to be seen. But yes, December is coming, and the teachers will probably get a bit of a lull, and we could probably launch it in December. I'm hoping so. So the principals out there who are listening in, do let us know that you'd be interested in something of this nature and the coaching approach, and they can actually help us become master coaches, or some of us, and then coach the other principals and the teachers, so that these changes can be truly brought about. So I think we can end there. Thank you, Meg, from the bottom of our hearts, for giving your precious time, and to really, enlightening us with things you've done so dedicatedly over so many years, and that's coming from your heart. And it's truly something that connects with ours, and we believe that this is something we should really engage with. So thank you ever so much. And so now, thanks. Yeah, thank you. And over to Shilpi then. I hope, Shilpi, I don't have to mute. Do I?
Yes,
You don't hear
yes,
me. I have to mute.
Thank you so much, Meg, for joining in the Disruptive Education Movement started by the Global Education and Training Institute. And I'm just wishing also the Advent week because it started. And thank you, Meg, for taking out time during December, which is actually the beginning of your holidays and everything. So here, I would like to request those people who are listening that the teachers training, online teachers training is going on. And if you have any questions regarding that, the foundation skills are already over. But for the upcoming modules, if you have any questions, you can put it either in the comment box or you can inbox us. There is the number which is coming below in the banner. You can always call upon that, and one of our team members will get in touch with you. And just to let you know that Meg and Martin are one of our keynote speakers at the 13th Ed Leadership Conference. Thank you so much, Sunita Gandhi, ma'am, and thank you, Meg, also for this lovely conversation. Thank you.